Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever wondered whether your life could be more than what it is now, pause for a moment, really pause, and feel this simple truth. Everything is possible, not because the world grants you special favors, but because the world mirrors the depth of your belief. You see, most people drift through life imprisoned by their own thoughts, locked in cages built by fear, regret, and inherited doubt. They stare at the bars and forget they hold the key. What I want to show you is simple. You have always had the key. And if you stay here, if you listen all the way to the end, you might remember how to use it. That's why you must listen. Because what you hear today could shift the axis of your life forever. You are the endless sky pretending to be a passing cloud. Somewhere along the way you believed you were small, a fragile fragment of something greater. But the truth is, you are the whole thing, condensed for a time into this form, this name, this story. And that story can change the moment you believe it can. You have been conditioned to think reality is fixed, but reality bends where your mind bends. It listens to your certainty, not your excuses. When you stand inside a deep belief, the universe becomes your echo. It responds not to your fleeting wishes, but to the unwavering tone in your mind that says, I am capable, I am worthy, I am possible. Do not confuse belief with fantasy. Belief is not daydreaming in a chair. Belief is a fire that pulls you up when you fail, that makes you stand again when you are laughed at, that carries you over walls built by people too afraid to climb them. You may stumble. Good. Stumble boldly. Every fall is proof that you moved. The ground is not your enemy. It teaches your feet how to find balance. The fear of falling is far more dangerous than the fall itself. If you truly believe in yourself, failure becomes just another step, a lesson whispered by life itself. Most people wait for permission to be great. They never realize that greatness does not wait for permission. It blooms the moment you decide it must. The moment you commit so deeply that your mind and body begin to act like your dream is already real. That is how belief transforms life. It makes you act now as if the impossible is already unfolding. If you doubt, then doubt your doubt. If you fear, then fear your fear. Do not worship it. The walls you see around you are illusions, dissolving as you move toward them. One by one they crumble under the weight of a single decision, to trust yourself more than you trust your limits. The question is not whether everything is possible, it is whether you will become the possibility itself. Not tomorrow, now. There is no secret door, no hidden magic. There is only this moment, and what you choose to believe about it. Sit with that, breathe it in. And when you rise knowing that the smallest step you take with absolute belief can transform a life more powerfully than the grandest plan built on doubt. Everything is possible, and you right now are proof that it can be so. You are not limited by your past or your fears. You are limited only by what you believe about yourself. This truth is simple, yet it terrifies many people because it leaves no one else to blame. It removes the comfort of pointing a finger at parents, society, circumstance, or fate. It shows you the mirror and whispers, look, it is you and only you. Most run from that reflection because it demands responsibility. But if you stand there long enough, if you hold your own gaze without flinching, something remarkable happens. You begin to see that the limits you thought were made of iron are made of thoughts. From the moment you opened your eyes as a child, you absorbed stories about what you could and could not do. You learned to doubt yourself before you ever learned to walk. People spoke their fears into you like seeds, and you watered them with your attention. They told you what was realistic, what was safe, what was good enough. And maybe you believed them because you wanted to belong, because humans are wired to trade freedom for acceptance. But there comes a time when you must decide, do you want to stay safe in that smallness, or do you want to taste the vastness that has always been waiting inside you? The infinite possibility within you is not a gift handed out to a lucky few. It is the natural state of every human being who dares to question the boundaries they inherited. To see it, you do not need to become someone else, you simply need to shed who you are not. Imagine standing in a house full of dusty old furniture, chairs that are broken, tables that wobble. For years you think this is all you have. Then one day you open the door and realize the house is huge, and you have been living in a single dark room. All you had to do was open the door. That door is belief. When you realize you are the one holding the key, you start to feel an unfamiliar power. At first it scares you. After all, power means you can no longer hide behind excuses. If you fail, it is yours. But so is every success. So is every chance to begin again, to shape your life with your own hands. And this is the silent secret. Freedom terrifies those who have grown addicted to their cages. It is easier to blame the lock than to turn the key. What does it look like when you trust in the infinite possibility within you? It looks like saying yes to the things that frighten you because they remind you how alive you are. It looks like laughing when you fall down because falling is proof that you dared to stand. It looks like standing in a room full of doubters and refusing to shrink to make them comfortable. It looks like taking a risk on yourself when the entire world says, be realistic. Realism is often the polite disguise of fear. Those who believe in impossibility are the guardians of the status quo. They cling to their limits like old blankets. They fear what happens when someone steps beyond them, because that someone becomes a mirror reflecting their own unchosen freedom. So they will tell you to stop dreaming, to be practical, to remember your place, and if you listen to them, you will live the life they chose for you, not the life that is truly yours.
To know that everything is possible does not mean you will get everything you want in the exact shape you imagined. It means something far more profound. You will always find a path where others see walls. You will keep moving when others stop. You will see solutions in the middle of chaos. You will hold a vision of yourself that is larger than your failures, your past, and the judgments of small minds. In this moment you have a choice. You can continue to wear the heavy armor of your limitations, dragging it through each day like a burden, or you can lay it down. You can decide that who you were yesterday has no authority over who you become today. This choice is not made once, it is made again and again. Each time you stand at the edge of your comfort, you are infinite possibility in human form. When you believe this, not as a pretty phrase but as a felt reality, you become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who walks into locked rooms and finds hidden doors, who sits with fear until fear becomes fuel, who dares to dream, dares to fail, dares to rise, and dares to live so fully that your very life becomes permission for others to do the same. Do not ask whether it is possible. Ask instead, do you believe enough to find out? Your mind is the architect of reality, though most people never realize they hold the blueprint. They drift from day to day as if the world is happening to them, never pausing to see that the world is happening through them. Thoughts appear like clouds drifting across the sky of your mind, and you believe them without question. You mistake these clouds for the sky itself, and so you build your life within the limits they draw. But look closer. Behind every cloud is open, boundless space. Every experience you have ever had was filtered through the lens of your own thoughts. Two people can stand side by side in the same place, at the same time, and live in two entirely different worlds. One sees opportunity, the other sees threat. One sees beauty, the other sees burden. The difference is not the place, nor the time. It is the mind interpreting what it sees. Your stories shape you more than any fact of circumstance. If you see yourself as weak, you act small. If you see yourself as unlucky, you walk with eyes closed to the open doors around you. If you see life as something to endure, you miss the dance it's inviting you into. But the moment you realize that you are the storyteller, that you can change the narrative at will, you feel a power so deep it almost frightens you. You see that reality is not some unyielding wall, it is a canvas. Your mind holds the brush. Consider how much of what you call your life is just an echo of old thoughts repeating themselves. You replay the same doubts, the same worries, the same complaints. You argue for your limitations without knowing it. You say, I am not good enough. I could never do that. That is not for people like me. And so your mind builds rooms with low ceilings and narrow doors, and you live within them as if they are all that exists. But belief, true belief, cracks those walls wide open. When you change the story, the architecture of your mind shifts, and the world must shift with it. It has no choice. This is not magic. It is the subtle force that shapes every human life. What you hold as true in your mind becomes the instructions you send to reality. It may take time, it may test your patience, but reality bends to your vision when you refuse to stop believing in it. You do not need to force the world to change. You need only to see it differently, and then act in alignment with that new vision. When you believe you are worthy of love, you move through the world in a way that invites it. When you believe you are capable, you stop asking permission to try. You stand taller, you speak clearer, you meet your own eyes in the mirror, and do not look away. The world responds to this shift, not because it is enchanted, but because it is practical. People trust those who trust themselves. Opportunities find those who are ready to receive them. The architect does not blame the building for its shape. They pick up the tools and change the design. So it is with your mind. If your life does not look the way you wish it would, do not curse the walls. Examine the blueprint. Which stories built this room? Which fears laid these bricks? Which doubts painted these dull colors? Then ask, what do I want to build instead? Many cling to the old design because it is familiar. Even suffering feels safe when it is predictable. But freedom is not for the mind that worships the comfort of its own misery. Freedom is for the mind that dares to redraw the lines, to tell a bigger story, to declare, I am not a prisoner of my past thoughts. I am the thinker, and I am free to think anew. This is how reality bends, not in one great leap, but in quiet moments of courage, when you choose a new thought over an old fear, when you catch yourself repeating an old lie, and decide, no, I do not believe that anymore. Each time you do this, you pull down a wall and let in more sky. Your mind is the architect. It always has been. The question is whether you will pick up the pencil or let someone else draw your life for you. If you do not choose your own thoughts, the world will gladly choose them for you. But when you remember that you are the designer, the limits of your reality become as flexible as your willingness to imagine something more.
You stand here now, blueprint in hand, the raw materials of your life waiting to be shaped. The mind that built your past is the same mind that can build your future. What will you draw next? What walls will you tear down? What impossible door will you sketch open and walk through, simply because you dared to believe you could? Belief is not wishful thinking. It is not sitting quietly in a corner, repeating sweet phrases to yourself while hoping the world rearranges itself to suit your comfort. Real belief is far more demanding and far more alive. It is not a fantasy you recite to escape the present. It is a force you embody to transform the present. To truly believe in yourself is to live in a way that leaves no doubt in your actions, even when doubt rattles in the background of your mind. Most people think belief is something you find when everything is certain, when you have enough proof, enough support, enough signs that say yes, it's safe now. But that is not belief at all. That is just agreement with the obvious. Real belief blooms exactly when there is no guarantee. It asks you to take the first step onto a bridge you cannot see in full. It makes you move while the outcome is still hidden behind the mist. You do not need to believe in the entire staircase. You need to trust the next step under your feet. This is the moment where so many people stop. They stand at the edge of their dreams, waiting for certainty, for permission, for someone else to promise they will not fall. But life does not promise that. Life does not promise comfort or the absence of fear. It promises only this: you will meet yourself more deeply each time you dare to move despite the tremble in your chest. To live in the power of present belief means to let your actions speak the language your mind is still learning. You may not feel ready. Act anyway. You may not feel fully confident. Stand up anyway. You may not see how the next chapter unfolds. Write the first word anyway. Action is belief made visible. If you want to know what you really believe about yourself, do not listen to what you say in moments of comfort. Watch what you do in moments of doubt. There is something holy about this. The moment when you stand in the middle of your fear, your excuses tugging at your sleeve, your old stories whispering that you will fail again, and you take a step forward anyway. This is how mountains are moved. Not by sudden miracles falling from the sky, but by small, relentless moments of belief turned into motion. The mind loves to trick you into postponing your life until you feel ready. It will say, just a little more time, just a little more planning. But readiness is not something you wait for. It is something you create by doing the very thing you fear. You build your courage like muscle, by lifting weight you once thought too heavy. And when you do, something shifts inside you. A small flicker becomes a steady flame. Each action taken in faith teaches your mind to trust itself. You realize that you can stand in uncertainty and not collapse. You see that life does not reward the one who waits for all green lights, but the one who drives even when the road is foggy. Many will watch you and misunderstand. They will think you are reckless, naive, unrealistic. Let them. Their doubt is not your burden to carry. If you shrink to fit inside their comfort, you betray the possibility that lives inside you. Remember this: you do not owe anyone an explanation for your belief. The results will speak for you in time. Let your belief be noisy in action and silent in argument. Do not waste your energy convincing the world what you are capable of. Show it. Do not waste your breath defending your dream. Build it. People argue with words. Reality argues with results. When you act in alignment with belief, the present moment becomes a seedbed for miracles. You learn that life responds not to hesitation but to commitment. The doors that look locked swing open for the one who knocks long enough and loud enough. The path appears for the one willing to walk while others stand waiting for guarantees. Test your belief in the smallest moments. Speak up when your voice trembles. Try when you feel unqualified. Take the chance that terrifies you just enough to remind you that you are alive. One bold step creates ripples that reach farther than you can see. And once you see your own courage in motion, you realize you can trust yourself to carry it again and again. This is the secret. Belief is not a thought floating idly through your mind. It is a decision you make real by the way you live this very second. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now, if you can do that, there is no limit to what is possible for you. Because life will always bend in the direction of the one who has the courage to move first. What seems impossible is only a boundary drawn by doubt. Belief is the eraser. The word impossible is nothing more than a fragile fence built by fear, held together by the stories people repeat until they become rules. Rules that say, you can't go there, you can't do that. People like you should stay where you are. But look closer and you'll see those rules have no real authority. They exist only because you obey them. The greatest illusion in life is the idea that the walls around you are made of stone when they are made of thoughts. We inherit impossibilities from the voices around us: parents, teachers, society, the cautious ones who never dared themselves. Their doubt becomes our map, but that map is not the territory. The territory is vast, endless in fact, but you only discover it when you stop following the routes others traced in their fear. If you believe something cannot be done, you will not even try, and so the impossible remains unchallenged, safe in its disguise. But the moment you dare to lean on that wall, to press your weight against it, cracks appear. You see that the boundary was soft all along, waiting for someone bold enough to question it. Think of every breakthrough that has ever changed the world, every invention, every piece of art, every act of courage. None of them were possible until someone did them. If you could ask those who made the impossible possible how they did it, they would not hand you a grand secret. They would tell you, I simply did not accept the limit. I refused to agree with what others said was true. Doubt wants you to believe it is wisdom. It wears the mask of caution and calls itself realistic. But more often doubt is just the voice of untested fear, whispering, stay here, stay small, stay safe. And what is safety really, if it costs you the chance to meet yourself fully? If you stand forever on the side of caution, you trade the wild adventure of your own potential for the dull comfort of certainty. You may wonder how to erase doubt when it has lived in you so long.
The answer is not to fight it like an enemy, but to see through it like a mirage. Doubt grows when you feed it your attention, when you argue with it, when you let it sit like a heavy stone on your chest. But doubt dissolves when you act in spite of it. When you lean in, move forward, test the limit, you prove to yourself that the boundary was not real. You have done this before, even if you have forgotten. Think of every first time you tried something you thought you couldn't do. Riding a bicycle, speaking your truth, stepping onto a stage, starting something new. Remember that rush, that trembling edge between fear and flight. In that moment, your old doubt cracked and you stepped through. Each time you did, you rewrote what was possible for you. Life is not asking you to be fearless. It is asking you to be daring enough to question fear's authority. It is asking you to look the word impossible in the eye and say, maybe for you, but not for me. It is asking you to test every limit with the curiosity of a child pressing against a locked door, wondering if maybe it's just stuck. When you meet impossibility with belief, you begin to see how flexible reality really is. What once looked immovable bends under your determination. What once looked final opens like a path through thick woods, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, and in that opening you expand too.
Your dreams are not reckless wishes. They are glimpses of what lies on the other side of your current doubts. They come to you because part of you already knows they are possible. You would not even be able to imagine them if some seed of them did not already live in you. Doubt tries to bury that seed. Belief waters it into life. Look at your life today, at the walls you think you cannot climb, the doors you think are forever closed, the ceilings you believe you cannot rise above. See them for what they really are, chalk lines drawn by old fear. And then pick up the eraser. Lean on the wall, push the door, knock louder than your excuses. There is no magic in the word impossible. The magic is in you, in your quiet refusal to accept a boundary that does not serve you, in your decision to test life at its edges and discover that the edge was only ever your mind's invention. Belief is not loud, but it is relentless. Doubt shouts. Belief whispers, try anyway. And trying is how the impossible becomes the new ordinary. Erase one doubt today. Test one limit. Take one step where you used to stop. And watch how life responds when you stop believing in impossibility more than you believe in yourself. True belief is not passive. It calls you to act, to risk, to step beyond familiar ground and stand where the air feels thinner, where your feet have nothing familiar to cling to. Most people confuse belief with sitting still and repeating comforting words. They think belief is some private thought they can keep hidden while they wait for the world to bring them proof. But real belief is a living force that shows its shape in what you do, not what you merely wish. Look at the ones who have moved mountains in their own quiet ways. They did not stand still waiting for guarantees. They felt something stirring inside them, a small spark that whispered try, and they stepped forward while their knees still trembled. Action is how belief introduces itself to the world. It is the handshake between your inner knowing and the life you want to build. It is easy to say you believe in your dreams while you remain safely behind the walls of routine. It is easy to say you trust yourself when no one can see whether you mean it. But the moment you step into unfamiliar territory, when you risk your comfort, your pride, your certainty, you find out if your belief is real or just a decoration on your tongue. Stepping beyond familiar ground is not just about grand gestures. Sometimes it is as small as the moment you decide to speak when your voice wants to hide, or when you say yes to something that feels bigger than your current self, or when you let go of something safe to make space for something true. People often say, one day, I'll believe in myself enough to do this, but they have it backward. You do not wait for belief to grow strong before you act. You act, and in that courageous motion, your belief finds its roots. You water it by showing up for your vision even when the world does not applaud or understand. The risk is what sharpens you. When you step into the unknown, you discover the parts of yourself that routine has kept hidden. You meet your own fears face to face, and instead of turning back, you learn that you can stand in their presence and move anyway. This is the secret most never learn. Fear and belief often coexist. The difference is that belief moves you through fear instead of letting fear chain you to the floor. You cannot tiptoe your way to the life you dream of. You cannot hide in the shadows of your old habits and expect new doors to open. The life you long for is waiting in the open, past the threshold of your excuses. It does not come to the one who waits for the perfect moment. It comes to the one who dares to act imperfectly now. To act in alignment with belief means you take responsibility for what you wish to become. You stop waiting for a sign more obvious than your own desire. You realize that the longing inside you is the sign. It is the invitation. It is the map. And you honor it not by talking about it endlessly, but by doing the next brave thing your mind tells you is just a little too much. Risk is uncomfortable, yes, but what is more uncomfortable is the life that remains unlived. It is the stale ache of what ifs. It is the slow erosion of your spirit, while you pretend that safety is worth the price of your deepest potential. Nothing will drain you more quietly than a dream kept in a box for the sake of staying unbruised.
The truth is, you will be bruised. You will fail sometimes. You will fall and feel foolish, and doubt will hiss its old poison. But belief does not mean you are spared from these things. It means you are willing to endure them for the sake of what calls you forward. It means you trust that every stumble shapes you, teaches you, refines you. Every step beyond the familiar is a vow to yourself. I trust myself more than I fear the unknown. And each time you do this, the unknown becomes less hostile, less strange. It becomes a territory that belongs to you, not because it was always safe, but because you learned how to walk its shifting ground with your eyes open and your spirit unafraid of its own shadows. If you want to know how deeply you believe, look at how you live when no one is watching. Look at what you do when comfort tempts you to stay. Look at whether you are willing to stand alone at the edge of what you know and say yes to what you do not yet understand. Belief without action is a song never sung, a seed never planted. But when you act clumsy, uncertain, imperfect, you give your belief shape, you make it visible, you invite life to meet you halfway, and it will, it always does, because the universe listens not to the silent wish, but to the one who moves. Each failure is not an end, but a lesson that refines your belief and sharpens your vision. It is a strange thing how we are taught to fear failure more than stagnation. From the time we are children, we are rewarded for being right, for coloring inside the lines, for getting the answer the first time without a stumble. But life is not a test you pass once and hang on the wall. Life is a dance of falling and rising, a conversation between your vision and your willingness to get it wrong on the way to getting it right. Failure in its purest form is feedback. It is the world's honest mirror showing you where your aim needs adjusting. It does not say you are unworthy, it says you are unfinished. And what a gift that is, to be unfinished, to be in motion, to be a work in progress rather than a stone monument gathering dust. Those who fear failure often fear judgment more than the fall itself. They imagine the laughter, the whispers, the shaking heads. They see themselves exposed and ridiculed, so they stay safe in the realm of what they already know, repeating yesterday's patterns, gathering dust in the name of certainty. But life does not honor the one who plays it safe forever. Life rewards the one who is willing to stand up, brush off the dirt, and try again, eyes brighter than before. Each time you fail, something hidden becomes clear. Perhaps it is a weakness you must strengthen, a plan you must refine, a blind spot you must see. Failure removes illusions. It humbles the parts of you that think they know it all and strengthens the parts of you that refuse to give up. In this way, failure is not the opposite of belief. It is the test that proves belief is real. Imagine if you succeeded at everything you did the first time. What would you know of resilience? What would you know of patience, humility, or your own surprising ability to adapt? It is only when you fail and stand up again that you learn you are more than one outcome. You become flexible, resourceful, quietly powerful. You realize that life can knock you down, but it cannot keep you down unless you agree to stay there. Failure also has a hidden gift. It strips you of what is false. Often we chase dreams that belong more to our egos than our true selves. When you fail, you are forced to ask, do I still want this? Is this mine to carry? Sometimes the answer is no, and that is not defeat, it is freedom. You put down what was never really yours, and open your hands for something more true. Failure sharpens your vision because it burns away the fog of wishful thinking. It teaches you what works and what doesn't. It gives you evidence, data, real understanding, and with each stumble you grow more precise. Your next attempt is not built on blind hope, but on tested ground. Look closely at the lives of anyone you admire, anyone who has created something meaningful, an artist, an inventor, a leader, a teacher, a healer. Beneath the visible success is an ocean of unseen failures, ideas that fell flat, attempts that went unnoticed, doors slammed shut, nights when doubt crept in like cold wind under a door. But these failures did not destroy them, they refined them. They stripped away what was unnecessary and revealed the steel hidden under soft skin. When you welcome failure as a teacher rather than an enemy, you become unstoppable. You do not measure your worth by a single outcome. You do not see a closed door as the end of the road, but as an invitation to knock somewhere else, or build your own door altogether. Belief is not the naive idea that you will never fail. It is the mature understanding that failure cannot stop you. It may slow you down, reroute you, humble you, but it cannot end you unless you choose to sit down and surrender your possibility. So fail. Fail with your head high and your eyes wide open. Fail better each time. Collect your failures like seeds, each one holding the promise of new growth. When people ask how you stayed standing through so many storms, you will smile and know it was never about avoiding the fall. It was about learning to land softer, to rise quicker, and to keep moving forward long after the timid souls gave up at the first sign of rain. This is how your belief grows stronger than your fear. This is how failure transforms from a threat into an ally. It will sharpen you, refine you, polish you into someone who does not just believe in possibility but lives as proof of it, not because you never fell, but because you never let the fall have the final word. To truly believe in yourself is to stand still amid storms, not to resist life, but to dance with it. So many people think belief is an iron shield that blocks all trouble, pain, or doubt. They imagine it as some unshakable fortress where nothing bad can reach them. But belief is not about building walls. It is about standing so deeply rooted in your own being that no storm can carry you away. The winds may roar, the rain may pour, but you remain, not untouched by life, but unbroken by it. There is a quiet strength in unshakable faith. It is not loud or boastful. It does not need to prove itself with empty declarations. It reveals itself in small, steady moments, in how you keep showing up when the world tests your patience, in how you hold your center when chaos wants to pull you apart, in how you breathe through the noise instead of becoming it. The one who truly believes does not run from the storm, nor do they curse it. They understand that storms are part of the weather of existence. Sunlight is sweet, but growth also comes from rain. Resistance only makes the storm feel crueler. Acceptance makes it a teacher. When you trust yourself deeply enough, you learn to bow to what you cannot control, and shape what you can. This is the dance, a graceful balance between yielding and standing firm. To stand still amid storms is not to be passive or weak. It is the opposite. It is to stand so rooted in your truth that you no longer need to fight life at every turn. You stop wasting energy wishing things were different, and start using that same energy to respond with calm power to what is. You become like a deep-rooted tree. The wind may bend your branches, but it cannot uproot you. This quiet strength is invisible to those who look only for outward displays of power. The world often praises the loud conqueror, the one who shouts, who pushes, who demands to win at all costs. But the deepest kind of victory is often silent. It is the victory of staying true to yourself, when the easier path is to betray your own heart for temporary comfort or praise. When you believe in yourself with this kind of depth, you learn to listen more than react. You listen to the whispers of your own intuition, the soft pull that says, wait, breathe, trust. You stop rushing to defend yourself against every criticism, every misunderstanding. You understand that not every battle deserves your presence. Some storms are better watched than fought. This does not mean you shrink from action when action is needed. It means that when you move from a place of calm certainty, not from panic or the frantic need to prove your worth. You know your worth. You know it because you have met yourself fully, in silence, when no one was watching, and found something steady there that no praise or insult can touch. The one who stands still amid storms becomes a refuge for others too. When the world is noisy and confusing, people are drawn to those who radiate quiet faith, not the faith that preaches or boasts, but the kind that simply is, unspoken, unmistakable. You become the calm eye in the hurricane, a reminder that it is possible to live gently and powerfully at once. Sometimes storms are not just outside you, they are within. Doubt, grief, fear. These whirl inside your mind like fierce winds. But even then, you can stand still. You can feel it all, let it rage, and still hold the part of you that is untouched by any weather. This is not denial. This is presence. This is the understanding that you are more than any passing thought or feeling. When you learn to stand like this, you become unshakable not because life grows easy, but because your roots grow deep. You understand that pain is not the enemy, change is not the enemy. The only enemy is the part of you that forgets how wide and strong you truly are. So let the storms come. Welcome them even. Each one will test you, strengthen you, deepen your trust in yourself. And when the clouds part and the light returns, you will know something that cannot be taken away. That your belief is not a fragile wish whispered into the dark. It is a living force, calm, clear, and steady, that holds you upright when the world tries to bend you low. This is the quiet strength of unshakable faith, not resistance, not arrogance, but a soft, steady trust that no matter how hard the wind blows, you are still here. You always were, you always will be, and from this place, anything is possible. When you dissolve your limits, you do not just chase possibility, you become it. This is the final unfolding of true belief in yourself, a shift so subtle yet so profound that you no longer see your dreams as distant stars you must run after, but as sparks already living within you, waiting for you to step aside and let them burn freely. Most people spend their lives chasing. They chase success, love, respect, meaning, all the while believing these things live somewhere outside them, waiting to be caught, if only they run fast enough, or become good enough. But the greatest secret is that nothing real can ever be separate from you. You are not meant to chase what you long for, you are meant to realize you are made of it. At first, this sounds too grand, too far from the daily struggle of paying bills, mending relationships, tending wounds. How can one possibly be possibility while standing ankle deep in life's muddy demands? But look deeper, and you see it is precisely in the mud that the seeds grow. The rose does not become the garden by waiting for perfect soil, it roots itself where it is and opens anyway. You too carry the seeds of what you seek. The question is not whether life will allow you to bloom, the question is whether you will stop strangling your own growth with old stories of limitation. The limits you believe about yourself are not your natural state, they are learned, handed down by fearful people who did not know they were limitless too. Conditioned into you by moments when you stumbled and mistook the stumble for a sentence. A child falls 1,000 times before they learn to walk. Imagine if they decided after the third fall that they simply weren't walking material. Yet grown minds do this every day, fail once or twice or 10 times, and decide the door is closed forever. But the door is never closed, the mind just stops knocking. To become the possibility itself is to drop the exhausting chase and stand where you are, fully awake to what is possible right now. It is to see that every breath is new, that every morning is unformed clay in your hands, that nothing in your past has the power to bind you unless you tie the knots tighter yourself, out of habit. It is easy to misunderstand this and think it means you should do nothing, simply sit in silence and chant pretty words about being limitless. But possibility is not passive. It moves through you as action, as presence, as choices made bravely in the face of old fears. When you become possibility, you stop asking permission to be what you know you already are. You stop waiting for the right moment and realize that this moment is the right one, because it is the only one. You become possibility each time you listen to that small voice inside you that says, "There is more to you than this." And instead of pushing it aside, you answer it with a step, a word, a decision. You become possibility each time you choose not to shrink to fit the comfort of others. Each time you say no to what no longer feeds your spirit. Each time you say yes to what terrifies and excites you at once. In this state, failure loses its sharp edges. Obstacles become part of the dance. You understand that bumps in the path do not mean the path is wrong. They mean you are alive, moving, testing the shape of your own freedom. When you meet a wall, you do not curse it. You feel along its surface for hidden doors. And if you find none, you remember you were never meant to stop at walls. You were meant to climb them, break them, build new roads around them. To become possibility is to live like the horizon, ever expanding as you walk toward it. It means you know you will never reach an endpoint, and that is the beauty of it. You are always in motion, always unfolding, always discovering new corners of your own vastness. You are both the seeker and what is sought, the dreamer and the dream made flesh. Others may look at you and wonder how you do it, how you keep opening doors they do not even see, how you carry so much hope without it hardening into fantasy. They will search for your secret, but the secret is not hidden. It is right here. You became possibility the moment you stopped asking whether you could, and started living as if you already were. Stand up, shake off the old limits like dust from your shoulders. Be the horizon, the open field, the door that opens by being walked through. You were never meant to merely chase what you desire. You were meant to become the place where desire turns into reality, not someday, but now, and now again, and again as long as you breathe. This is what happens when you dissolve your limits. You stop being the one who wonders what is possible, and start being the proof that it always was. When you stand at the edge of what you've known and dare to lean forward, you see that what holds you back has never been the world itself, but the walls you agreed to live within. The truth is simple and terrifying. Everything is possible when you believe deeply enough to act, to risk, to stand unshaken when storms come, to fail and rise, to live so boldly that you become the proof that limits are nothing but stories waiting to be rewritten. You have heard that you must chase your dreams, but now you see, you are the dream. You are the possibility made flesh. You are the one with the key to every door you thought was locked. You are the bridge between longing and reality, the seed and the garden, the storm and the calm center that stands through it all. So let them say it cannot be done. Let them whisper about the odds, the risks, the impossibility of it all. Smile at the doubt, for it does not belong to you anymore. You have chosen the greater courage, to believe in yourself so fiercely that the world has no choice but to bend and expand with you. When you understand this, not just with your mind, but with your living actions, you realize that the impossible is only ever waiting for someone brave enough to name it possible. Let that someone be you. Stand up, lean in, push through, and become the quiet miracle that reminds everyone else what they too have always carried inside. Everything is possible, not someday, not for someone else, but for you, here, now. Walk forward, test the walls, write new blueprints. Let your life be the loudest answer to every voice that ever told you to stay small. May your days become living proof that believing in yourself does not just change you, it transforms the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, the most important conversation you will ever have is the one you never share out loud, We live in a world that constantly tugs at your sleeve, demanding attention, praise, approval. It wants you to look outward, to measure your worth by likes, followers, and applause. But that applause, it fades. What remains is what you built within. If you don't focus on yourself, you will live a life scripted by others. That is the brutal truth most never confront. So I ask you, who are you becoming while trying to keep up with everyone else? You see, direction in life is not given, it's forged. Quietly, alone. While everyone else is busy being seen, the whys are being shaped in silence. You don't build a meaningful life by being available to everything. You build it by being loyal to your own unfolding. When you focus on yourself, you're not escaping the world. You are learning to face it from the center of who you are. And from that center, everything aligns. Your decisions sharpen. Your words become deliberate. Your presence begins to carry weight. Because you're no longer drifting, you are directed. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Self-focus is uncomfortable. Why? Because it reveals your distractions, your excuses, your contradictions. But that is where the real work happens. That's where you choose evolution over approval. You were not meant to fit into every room.
every group, every idea. The more you shrink for others, the more lost you become. But the moment you start asking, what do I need right now? What is true for me? Everything begins to change. The real direction is not found through answers. It's found by asking better questions. Who are you without the noise? What do you value when no one's watching? What is pulling you forward that has nothing to do with fame or validation? The world will call you selfish, but let them. You don't need applause when you walk with purpose. You don't need permission to choose yourself, just courage. And once you do, you'll realize something profound. You were never really lost, only distracted. You are the compass, not the crowd. That may sound poetic, but it's the foundation of a life with real direction. The trouble is, we're raised to believe the opposite. We're taught to look outside ourselves for answers, to ask others what we should do, how we should live, and who we should be. The crowd becomes our map, and we become lost in their landmarks. But if you keep following the crowd, you'll only end up where they're going, not where you were meant to be. Most people wake up each day and immediately tune into what others are doing. They scroll, compare, admire, envy, mimic. But by doing so, they are outsourcing their own internal compass to external signals. And the problem with that is simple. Everyone else is just as confused as you are. They're just louder. Louder doesn't mean clearer. Popular doesn't mean right. Just because something is trending doesn't mean it's meant for you. There is something sacred about solitude, something irreplaceable about pausing to ask, what do I actually think? Not what I've been told, not what's trending, not what's expected, but me. Who am I becoming? And is that aligned with who I truly am? These are not questions the crowd can answer for you. In fact, the crowd will avoid these questions altogether. Why? Because they force you to confront yourself. When you focus on yourself, truly, you begin to unearth all the layers you've been hiding behind. The masks, the personas, the roles you've been playing to survive, to please, to fit in. And when you strip those layers away, something terrifying yet liberating happens. You meet yourself. Maybe for the first time in years, you begin to realize that you've been living a borrowed life designed by other people's preferences and fears. And that's when the shift happens, from following to leading, from noise to clarity. Direction isn't a path you find, it's a path you build, one step at a time, from the inside out. And each step must come from your own clarity, not someone else's opinion. When you are the compass, you stop chasing things that were never meant for you. You stop following trends that don't align with your truth. You stop trying to fit into spaces that require you to shrink or fake it. Being your own compass requires something rare, the willingness to stand still while everyone else rushes. It demands a deep trust in yourself, even when there's no confirmation, no applause, no clear result. And yes, people may call you arrogant, selfish, or antisocial for walking your own way. But those words usually come from people who are terrified to walk alone. Because when you walk alone, every step is your responsibility. But it's also your freedom. Here's the paradox. The more you try to follow others, the more lost you become. But the more you follow yourself, the more you naturally end up where you're supposed to be, and ironically, where people most want to be around you. Why? Because people are magnetized by authenticity. Real direction attracts real connection. When you know who you are, others can sense it. They trust your energy even if they don't understand your path. The crowd will offer you many things: comfort, validation, distraction, but rarely will it offer you truth. Truth is quieter, deeper, more personal. And that's why being your own compass is not about arrogance. It's about integrity. It's about refusing to betray yourself for temporary belonging. It's about asking, does this align with my values? Does this feel right in my gut? Am I honoring myself in this decision? Most people don't realize that every time they say yes to something that doesn't feel right, they're slowly eroding their internal compass. Over time, the signal gets fuzzy. The gut gets ignored. The intuition grows silent. And then one day you wake up and don't recognize the life you've built, not because it's wrong by societal standards, but because it's completely disconnected from who you truly are. How do you reclaim that compass? You start by stopping. Stop asking everyone for advice. Stop looking for signs outside of yourself. Start listening to your thoughts before the world pollutes them. Start observing what gives you peace, what makes you feel alive, what brings you back to yourself. Those are your directions, not because they're glamorous, but because they're yours. To be your own compass means to finally live your life, not a reaction, not an imitation, but an original expression of who you are. It's not easy, it's not fast, and it's not always comfortable, but it's real. And in a world full of noise, confusion, and distraction, being real is the most powerful direction you can take. You are not lost. You're just surrounded by too many signs pointing away from yourself. Come back. Return inward. Trust that inner voice again. It's been waiting patiently for you to listen. Noise is a distraction. Silence is a guide. That may sound simple, almost poetic, but in truth, it's one of the deepest realizations a person can have. In this modern world, we are constantly immersed in noise, not just the literal kind, but the emotional, mental, and spiritual clutter that fills our days. The opinions, the updates, the endless barrage of information, none of it stops. It keeps churning, and we keep absorbing. And in the process, we forget how to listen, not to others, but to ourselves. We have been conditioned to associate movement with meaning and sound with value. We scroll through lives that aren't ours, consume thoughts that don't belong to us, and adopt beliefs we've never truly questioned. All the while, our inner world becomes harder to hear. The voice inside, the one that knows what we truly need, where we're meant to go, gets drowned out by the volume of the outside world. Noise is seductive. It gives the illusion of progress, of participation, of connection. But more often than not, it only delays our encounter with the truth. We become so busy reacting that we never ask if we're responding from authenticity or autopilot. And that's where the danger lies. Noise convinces you that you're awake while you're actually asleep to your own needs, your own wisdom. Silence, on the other hand, is confronting. It strips away the comfort of distraction. When everything becomes still, there's nothing left to run from. You are face to face with your thoughts, your fears, your longings. Most people avoid this. They turn up the volume, more conversations, more tasks, more entertainment, anything to avoid the stillness. But what they don't realize is that silence isn't empty. It's full of truth, of clarity, of direction. Direction doesn't come from noise. It never has. The loudest voices rarely speak from knowing, they speak from habit. True direction comes when we slow down enough to hear the voice underneath all the conditioning. That voice doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't argue for your attention. It waits patiently, like a wise teacher who only speaks once you're ready to listen. But listening requires presence. You can't hear anything when you're rushing through life, when your mind is constantly bouncing between screens and worries and external opinions. You have to stop, breathe, let the dust settle. In that stillness, a space opens, and in that space, something remarkable happens. You start to see what actually matters, not what's urgent, but what's real. When you embrace silence, you begin to reconnect with your intuition, not the reactive voice of anxiety or doubt, but the calm, grounded sense of knowing. That knowing is your compass. It doesn't give you a 5-year plan, it doesn't scream answers, but it nudges you, it aligns you. It says, go this way, even when logic says otherwise. And the more you trust it, the stronger it gets. This is why people who spend time alone, who meditate, walk in nature, write, reflect, often seem more centered. It's not that they've escaped life's problems, it's that they've cultivated the ability to hear themselves in the midst of the noise. That is a superpower in today's world. Because when you can hear yourself clearly, you don't need external validation to move forward. You don't need to be told what to do, who to be, or how to live. You become self-led. Being self-led isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to stop listening to the noise long enough to hear your own questions. It's about trusting that the deepest wisdom doesn't come from podcasts or social media posts. It comes from within. It rises in the quiet moments when you're not trying to impress anyone, prove anything, or achieve something. Noise will always be there. The world won't get quieter. But you can. You can choose silence, not as an escape, but as a return. A return to yourself, a return to clarity, because clarity is not something you chase. It's something that emerges when the fog of noise lifts. And in that clarity, life becomes simpler. Decisions become easier. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop imitating and start creating. You begin to move not just with speed, but with depth. And depth is where meaning lies. If you find yourself confused, lost, overwhelmed, it's not because you don't know what to do. It's because you haven't been quiet long enough to hear what you already know. Turn down the noise, step into the silence. Let it speak, let it guide, Everything you've been searching for, peace, purpose, direction, it's already within you. You just need to make space to hear it. Self-focus is not selfishness, it's alignment. This distinction is crucial, yet it's often misunderstood in a world that praises overcommitment, self-sacrifice, and constant availability. From a young age, we're taught that putting others first is virtuous, that saying yes makes you good, and that focusing on your own growth is somehow arrogant or self-centered. But what if that belief is what's keeping so many people tired, lost, and disconnected from themselves? You cannot give to the world what you haven't yet cultivated within. You cannot offer love, clarity, or stability to anyone when you are scattered, empty, and misaligned. Focusing on yourself is not an act of neglecting others. It is the most responsible and respectful thing you can do. It means you are choosing to operate from wholeness, not from obligation or performance. It means you are choosing truth over approval, depth over surface level validation. When you are in alignment, your actions flow from integrity. You don't just do things to be liked or accepted. You move with clarity because you know what matters to you, and that clarity gives your energy purpose. It makes your time valuable. It makes your presence nourishing, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Think about it. Would you rather be with someone who's constantly drained, constantly saying yes while resenting it, constantly abandoning themselves just to keep the peace? Or would you rather be with someone who knows themselves deeply, who respects their own time and space, and who shows up fully when they choose to? People can feel when you're out of alignment. Even if you smile, even if you're polite, even if you say the right things, there's a tension. Something feels off. And most of the time, that's because your actions are not rooted in your center. They're reactive, not intentional. Self-focus helps you return to that center. It helps you ask, is this choice honoring who I am and where I want to go? And if the answer is no, you have the right to step away, not because you're selfish, but because you're finally respecting your own path. Alignment is about coherence. It's about making your thoughts, actions, emotions, and values move in the same direction. That doesn't mean you'll always have it figured out. It means you're committed to checking in with yourself, adjusting when necessary, and refusing to betray yourself for temporary comfort. The people who call that selfishness are often those who benefit from your self-neglect. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them misinterpret. You were not born to be understood by everyone. You were born to live in truth. When you focus on yourself, you begin to understand your patterns. You see where you've been giving out of guilt, where you've been saying yes out of fear, where you've been staying silent just to keep things easy. And slowly you begin to reclaim those pieces of yourself. You begin to take back your time, your energy, your voice. This reclamation isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's steady, quiet, powerful. And something beautiful happens in that process. You become more peaceful. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer fragmented. You're no longer divided between what you feel and what you do. You're no longer chasing approval from people who don't even know the real you. You're standing in yourself for yourself. This is where real direction begins. Because when you're aligned, your choices become clearer. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds. You stop feeling guilty for choosing rest, solitude, growth. You start living with intention. You start moving with rhythm, not rush. It's not about shutting the world out. It's about learning how to participate in it without losing yourself. It's about realizing that your greatest impact comes not from constantly pouring yourself out, but from being so rooted in yourself that what overflows from you is real, potent, and transformative. Don't confuse alignment with selfishness. Selfishness takes from others to benefit the self. Alignment honors the self so that what you offer to others is sincere. It's not about always putting yourself above others. It's about not putting yourself below them. It's about recognizing that your needs matter, your dreams matter, your energy matters. And when you start acting like that's true, your life begins to reflect it. There is no direction without alignment. Because if you're not aligned, every step you take, no matter how fast or ambitious, pulls you further from your center. The destination might look impressive, but it will feel hollow. So slow down, come back. Focus on yourself, not as a way to isolate, but as a way to unify all the parts of you that have been scattered, silenced, or neglected. This is not selfish. This is sacred. And this is how you build a life that actually feels like your own. Comparison is the enemy of direction. It might seem harmless. Just a glance at someone else's progress, a quick peek at their success, but it's a trap disguised as inspiration. One moment you're focused on your path, and the next, you're questioning everything because someone else seems to be ahead. But here's the truth. The more you compare, the more you disconnect from your own journey. And the more disconnected you are, the more directionless you feel. Comparison doesn't just steal joy, it hijacks your clarity. It plants doubts where there was once confidence. You begin to wonder, am I too late? Should I be doing what they're doing? Why is their life unfolding faster than mine? But none of those questions bring you closer to your purpose. In fact, they pull you further away. You stop listening to your own voice and start chasing someone else's rhythm, someone else's standards, someone else's dreams. And in doing so, you abandon your own. The most dangerous thing about comparison is how quietly it creeps in. It starts as curiosity and ends as self-doubt. You begin to shrink, not because you're unworthy, but because you've allowed someone else's timeline to define your value. And let's be honest, comparison is rarely fair. You're judging your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. You see their success, their confidence, their apparent ease, but you don't see the struggles they hide, the doubts they bury, the fears they carry in silence. When you constantly compare, you forget that your journey is uniquely designed for you. Your lessons, your timing, your growth, it all unfolds at a pace that's aligned with your soul, not your ego, and the ego is never satisfied. So no matter how much you achieve, if you measure it by comparison, it will never feel like enough. Direction requires trust. It requires presence. And most of all, it requires focus on your steps, your lessons, your evolution. When your eyes are constantly scanning the lives of others, you become blind to the opportunities right in front of you. You delay your own growth by trying to imitate someone else's. But imitation is not transformation. It's distraction dressed as ambition. There is nothing wrong with being inspired by others. But there's a thin line between inspiration and comparison. One uplifts you, the other diminishes you. Inspiration reminds you what's possible. Comparison convinces you you're not enough. And when you believe that lie long enough, you stop taking action. You become paralyzed by perfectionism, afraid to begin, because someone else has already started. You become obsessed with catching up, forgetting that you were never behind, you were just on a different road. The truth is, no one is ahead or behind. We're all walking different paths with different lessons and different timing. And the only way to truly move forward is to focus inward. Ask yourself, what feels right for me right now? What do I value? What do I want to build? Not because it looks good to others, but because it feels aligned with who I am becoming. Comparison disconnects you from those questions. It replaces self-reflection with self-criticism. It makes you chase validation instead of meaning. And over time, that leads to burnout, resentment, and emptiness, even if you manage to achieve the things you thought you wanted. Because if you're constantly living in reaction to others, you'll never feel the peace of living in alignment with yourself. Your direction can only emerge when you stop trying to fit into a story that isn't yours. Let them run their race. Let them win their awards, take their trips, buy their homes, hit their milestones. Celebrate them if you can, but don't let their path distract you from your own. The moment you stop comparing is the moment you regain your power, because now your energy is no longer split between chasing others and doubting yourself. It's rooted, it's focused, it's clear, and that clarity is where confidence grows. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet, unwavering knowing that says, I am where I'm supposed to be. That kind of confidence can't be faked. It can't be borrowed. It's cultivated in silence, in solitude, in self-trust. And once you have it, you become immovable. Not because life gets easier, but because your direction becomes your own. The next time you find yourself looking sideways, take a breath. Bring your gaze back to your own path. Remind yourself that your journey is not a race, it's a return. A return to who you truly are, what you truly value, and where you are genuinely meant to go. You don't need to move faster, you need to move truer. And that only happens when you walk forward, not in comparison, but in purpose. Mastery demands isolation before integration. This is one of the most overlooked truths in a world obsessed with quick results and constant visibility. Everyone wants to be seen succeeding, admired for their growth, recognized for their brilliance, but very few are willing to disappear long enough to develop that brilliance. The truth is, the most profound transformations happen away from the crowd, in silence, in solitude, in spaces where no one is clapping and no one is watching. That's where real mastery begins. We often mistake exposure for growth. Just because you're visible doesn't mean you're evolving. Real growth is often invisible. It looks like reading in silence while everyone else is out. It looks like practicing your craft over and over when no one is acknowledging your efforts. It looks like turning down distractions, not because you don't crave them, but because you've decided your future is worth more than momentary validation. You cannot build a solid internal foundation in the presence of constant noise. You must go within. Isolation here doesn't mean loneliness. It means choosing to retreat from external distractions to sharpen your inner world. It means making a conscious decision to tune out what doesn't serve your vision so that you can finally tune into what does. And this is hard because solitude exposes everything. There's no audience to impress, no one to blame, no distractions to run to. Just you, your thoughts, and the truth of who you are. But that confrontation is necessary because you cannot master what you're unwilling to meet. People want the results of mastery, but they don't want the silence that precedes it. They want to speak with wisdom, but don't want to sit and study. They want clarity, but avoid stillness. They want confidence, but fear the loneliness that must be walked through to earn it. That's why so few people ever experience deep transformation. They can't stand the quiet required to get there. But when you commit to isolation, something powerful begins to unfold. You start to hear your own voice again, the one that's been buried under everyone else's expectations. You begin to feel your intuition become louder, more precise. Your attention sharpens, your distractions fall away. Time slows down, not in boredom, but in presence. You realize that everything you were looking for outside, validation, purpose, direction, was waiting to be uncovered inside all along. This season of isolation is where your future is built. The habits you form, the thoughts you discipline, the truths you discover, these become the architecture of the life you're meant to live. And when you finally re-emerge from that space, you're not the same. You walk differently, you speak with more weight, you move with precision, not performance. Because now, what you offer to the world isn't borrowed or imitated. It's original, refined through solitude, aligned with your deepest truth. Only then can integration happen. Integration means taking what you've learned in private and applying it in public, not to prove, not to impress, but to serve, to live fully. Integration is the process of becoming whole, where your inner life and outer life begin to mirror each other. But that wholeness only comes after you've allowed yourself to be incomplete, in private, long enough to rebuild on your own terms. The irony is that the more time you spend in isolation, refining yourself, the more powerful your presence becomes when you re-enter the world. People will wonder where your strength came from, how you gained so much clarity, why your energy feels grounded and real. They won't realize it was built in silence, through repetition, reflection, and restraint. Mastery is not a show. It's a silent commitment that echoes louder than any applause ever could. If you feel called to step away, to pause the noise, to pull back from constant engagement, to sit with your craft or your pain or your purpose, honor that call. Doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're being found, not by the world, but by yourself. And once you find that version of you, the one not shaped by trends, opinions, or expectations, you'll never again feel the need to chase approval. You will simply be, and in that being, you will radiate a kind of strength and clarity that cannot be faked. Everything beautiful is first formed in darkness. Seeds sprout in silence, not under spotlights. Muscles are built in sweat and repetition, not in applause. Wisdom is earned in solitude, not in conversation. So don't resist your season of isolation, embrace it. Let it strip away what's false, let it refine what's real. Let it prepare you, not just to succeed, but to carry your success with depth, with humility, with intention. That is mastery. Not noise, not fame, not speed, but depth, clarity, and alignment. And you can't reach that place without first being alone with yourself long enough to become who you were always meant to be. Discipline is the language of self-respect. It's not just about routines, rules, or rigid schedules. It's about the quiet promise you keep to yourself. The sacred agreement that says, I am worthy of my own time, energy, and effort. In a world where it's easy to betray yourself for comfort or convenience, discipline becomes the most honest form of self-love. That's because we've been taught that anything that requires effort must be a burden. But real discipline doesn't arise from shame or fear. It grows from clarity. When you truly know what you want, when you've chosen your values consciously, discipline becomes a tool, not a chain. It's the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. Discipline means saying no, not because you're depriving yourself, but because you're directing yourself. Every no to distraction is a yes to alignment. Every time you choose progress over comfort, you reinforce your own worth. You tell yourself, my future matters enough for me to act on it now. That message, repeated through action, is how self-respect is built, not with affirmations, but with choices. Think about it. How do you feel after you follow through on a promise to yourself, even something small? You feel grounded, clear, empowered. Not because the task was exciting, but because it reminded you of who you are. And on the flip side, how often have you felt defeated after letting yourself slide, after skipping what you said you'd do, after giving in again to distraction or avoidance? That sense of disappointment doesn't come from the missed task, it comes from the fractured relationship with yourself. Discipline repairs that relationship. We tend to be more committed to others than we are to ourselves. We'll show up for deadlines, keep promises to friends, fulfill obligations, even if it drains us. But when it comes to showing up for our own growth, we hesitate. We delay. We make excuses. And over time, this double standard begins to erode our sense of self-worth. Discipline levels the field. It says, I matter just as much as everything else I prioritize. This isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming some hyperproductive machine. Real discipline is flexible. It adjusts, adapts, and forgives. But it doesn't disappear. It shows up even when you don't feel like it, not with force, but with care. It reminds you that how you do one thing often reflects how you do everything. If you train yourself to ignore your own standards, you'll lose the ability to trust yourself. And trust is everything. Without it, you can't build direction, confidence, or peace. There will always be reasons to quit. The mind is clever. It will justify laziness with logic, disguise avoidance as rest, and paint distractions as necessary. But discipline sees through that noise. It anchors you. It becomes your inner structure when the world outside is unpredictable. It's the inner voice that says, I know it's hard and I'm still choosing to stay on course. The truth is, motivation fades, feelings change. Life gets messy, but discipline doesn't ask for perfect conditions. It creates them. It doesn't wait for inspiration, it initiates. And that initiation, that consistent return to what matters, is how you begin to shape a life that's not reactive, but intentional. Discipline also teaches patience. In a culture obsessed with instant results, discipline reminds you that real growth takes time. Mastery takes repetition. Healing takes consistency. Direction is not found in grand gestures. It's carved out in the mundane, day after day. And every time you choose to keep going when no one is watching, you are building something far more valuable than success. You are building integrity. You start to walk differently when you know you can trust yourself. You speak with more certainty. You stop needing external validation because you've already validated yourself through action. Discipline frees you from the chaos of emotion and indecision. It says, even when I don't feel like it, I will keep showing up because this is who I am. And that kind of identity, one rooted in choice, consistency, and clarity, is unshakable. When your life lacks discipline, it begins to feel directionless. You start responding to life rather than creating it. You fall into habits instead of shaping them. You end up exhausted, not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing the wrong things over and over. Discipline redirects you. It filters your actions through purpose. It asks, is this helping or hindering? Is this aligned or distracting? And slowly, your life begins to reflect the answers. When you practice discipline, you're not being hard on yourself, you're honoring yourself. You're saying, I care about where I'm going. I care enough to be consistent. I care enough to delay temporary pleasure for lasting peace. And that care, shown through daily effort, becomes the quiet power that carries you forward, far beyond motivation, far beyond the crowd. You won't always get it right. There will be setbacks, moments of fatigue, times you'll slip. That's okay. Discipline isn't about never falling, it's about always returning. Again and again, until the return itself becomes natural. until your standards become your rhythm, until the person you're becoming is no longer a distant goal, but a present truth. That is the power of discipline. Not control, but liberation. Not rigidity, but alignment. Not pressure, but deep, unshakable self-respect. When you're not attached to the outcome, you begin to move with a different kind of power. It's not the power that demands control or craves assurance. It's a quiet, grounded confidence that emerges from within. Most people operate from a space of fear. They're terrified things won't go their way, and so they grip tightly, overanalyze, and exhaust themselves trying to bend reality to fit their vision. But when you release attachment, you give up that need to micromanage life. You stop chasing outcomes and start flowing with what actually is. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing. You still show up, still do the work, still have a vision. But you're no longer controlled by the result. That's where true freedom lies, when your sense of peace isn't tied to whether things unfold according to plan. Because often, life has a better plan than the one you're clinging to. The more you force, the more resistance you create, but the more you allow, the more space you create for magic to happen. The irony is, when you stop obsessing over what you want, you often receive more than you imagined. Why? Because your energy shifts. Instead of moving from desperation, you move from alignment. You act not because you're afraid of missing out, but because it feels right. Your intention is clean. Your actions are authentic. And people can feel that. The universe can feel that. The art of non-attachment is not passive. It's deeply active. It requires discipline. It asks you to release your ego's grip on how things should be. It demands presence. When you're detached, you don't waste energy ruminating over past failures or fixating on future what-ifs. You're here now, doing what needs to be done with clarity and focus. And that presence alone is a form of power. Because when your mind is not clouded by worry or obsession, your actions become precise and impactful. You begin to trust the process, not blindly, but intelligently. You understand that control is an illusion, and that life isn't about making everything happen on your timeline. It's about showing up consistently and allowing space for things to unfold. Sometimes what you want isn't what you need, and sometimes what you think is a failure is actually a redirection to something greater. You can't see that when you're attached. But when you let go, you give life a chance to surprise you. Attachment breeds anxiety, tension, and chaos. Detachment breeds peace, flow, and resilience. It doesn't mean you don't care about the outcome. It means your happiness doesn't depend on it. You stop making your worth conditional. You stop making your inner peace negotiable. And that makes you unshakable. Because now you're not defined by success or failure. You're defined by your presence, your effort, and your integrity. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a mindset you train. Every time you feel the urge to grasp, pause, breathe. Remind yourself that you've done your part. Let the rest go. This is not surrender in the weak sense. It's surrender in the most powerful sense. It's an act of deep trust. And trust is not naive. It's courageous. It says, I am enough no matter what happens. That belief alone changes the way you walk through the world. Detachment is not about giving up your goals. It's about holding them lightly. Pursue your dreams with passion, but don't cling to them like your life depends on it. Your life depends on your peace. And peace comes from letting go of control, not from gripping tighter. You'll start to notice something beautiful. When you stop trying so hard to control things, things start to align. Opportunities open up, people show up, life flows better. Not because you manipulated the outcome, but because you got out of your own way. You stopped being the obstacle. You started being the vessel. In that space, you become more creative, more intuitive, more alive. You notice beauty you were too busy chasing goals to see before. You make decisions not from panic, but from clarity. You act not from fear, but from wisdom. And that changes everything, not just what you achieve, but who you become in the process. Because at the end of the day, that's the real goal. Not the outcome, but the transformation. Not what you get, but who you grow into. Non-attachment allows that growth. It opens the door for deeper strength, deeper peace, and deeper purpose. And once you've tasted that, you won't want to go back to the old way of chasing, grasping, and needing. You'll still work hard, still dream big, still take bold action. But now, you'll do it from a place of quiet power. A power that doesn't depend on results to feel fulfilled. A power that's rooted in presence, peace, and trust. That's the power of non-attachment. That's the energy that truly moves mountains. The essence of this speech is a powerful reminder that true transformation begins from within. Alan Watts masterfully guides us through the layered understanding that growth, clarity, and personal power are not found in chasing external circumstances, but in deep internal alignment. Life's struggles, boredom, mental chaos, and emotional turmoil are not enemies to be feared, but invitations to evolve. When you stop running from discomfort and start observing it, you awaken the strength to reshape your identity, rewire your mind, and reclaim your purpose. This speech encourages you to shift your attention inward, to grow yourself first, to discipline your thoughts, and to stay silent while working relentlessly. It teaches that victory doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers through quiet resilience, consistent effort, and the patience to build in the dark. When you train your mind, embrace solitude, and take full responsibility for your journey, you don't just survive life, you master it.